Kieran had always dreamed of exploring the stars, but nothing could have prepared him for the moment he stepped onto the planet Valera. The air smelled strange, metallic, yet sweet, and two suns hung low in the sky, casting long golden shadows across a city that seemed alive. Towering structures of silver and gold spiraled upward, shimmering like they were breathing. He felt small, human small, and yet he also felt a spark of something unfamiliar, a thrill, a fear, and a deep, gnawing curiosity that refused to let him turn back. He had been sent as an observer, a diplomat of humanity. His mission was simple: study, understand, report. But standing there, watching the alien city stretch endlessly before him, he realized that his role might not be so simple. Not here. Not on a world ruled by beings who were unlike anything humans had ever imagined. It was then that he saw them. A group of alien warriors moving together as one, their armor gleaming under the twin suns. Their skin was bronze, muscles taut and defined, eyes sharp and reflective. They did not walk. They glided, each step precise, each motion controlled, yet somehow natural. The leader was a woman, taller than three men stacked together, her presence commanding even from a distance. Her hair, if it could be called hair, shimmered with a liquid-like glow, falling past her shoulders in waves of color that shifted in the light. Kieran froze. His translator device, strapped carefully to his chest, began to hum softly, converting their clicks and guttural sounds into words he could understand. "Human," one said, or rather the translation said it. "Why have you come here?" Kieran swallowed hard. His throat was dry, his hands shaking slightly. I came to learn," he said, his voice quieter than he intended. "To understand your people, your world." The leader's eyes narrowed, scanning him from head to toe. There was no smile, no warmth, just the sharp intensity of someone used to being obeyed. Someone who had never had to deal with fragility in another creature. Kieran's heart pounded. He wanted to apologize, to explain, to run, but his feet stayed planted. A few warriors moved closer, forming a semicircle around him. Weapons glinted in the sunlight. Each of them radiated strength and danger. Kieran had read about alien species before, had studied reports, learned survival techniques, but nothing in his training prepared him for standing face to face with beings like these. He felt exposed, vulnerable, human. The leader stepped forward. Her voice, when it came, was translated perfectly by the device, but Kieran felt the raw power behind it, the command that could make mountains bow. "You are fragile," she said, each word deliberate, heavy. "Yet you do not flee." "Why?" Kieran's hands gripped his satchel tightly. Because I cannot hide from what I want to understand," he replied, his voice gaining strength as he spoke. "I want to know your world, your people, and I want to learn from you, not just observe." The leader tilted her head, studying him as though he were a puzzle she had yet to solve. And then, without warning, she laughed, a sound like breaking crystal, sharp and thrilling, echoing across the plaza. It was not mockery. It was not anger. It was curiosity. "You are bold human," she said. "Bold and foolish." Kieran felt a shiver run down his spine. He did not know if this was a compliment or a warning. The warriors around them seemed tense, waiting for her command. And yet in that moment he realized something powerful. Even among the fiercest warriors he had ever seen, even in a world that seemed impossible to survive, humanity, his humanity, had given him courage. He took a slow breath. For the first time he did not feel entirely small. He felt seen, and in her eyes he glimpsed something new. A spark of intrigue, a question, a challenge. Kieran knew in that moment that nothing would ever be the same again. Kieran had barely recovered from the shock of seeing the alien warriors up close when the leader spoke again. Her voice was low, commanding, yet curious. "You are not like the others," she said. "Most humans would have run, screamed, or collapsed by now. Why do you not?" Kieran swallowed hard. His mouth was dry and his hands trembled slightly, but he forced himself to meet her gaze. I want to understand," he said. "Not to fight, not to take anything from you. I just want to know who you are, how you live, what drives you." Her eyes narrowed. A small smile touched her lips, though it was fleeting, almost invisible. The warriors around them shifted, some lowering their weapons slightly. Kieran realized they were watching him, testing him, seeing if he would falter under the weight of their stare. You speak boldly for one so small, the leader said, her voice sharp. Your kind is fragile, weak, easily broken. I may be weak, Kieran admitted, but strength is not just about muscle or weapons. It's about heart, will, courage, and I have all three even if I am small. For a long moment silence fell. The only sound was the hum of the city and the faint wind brushing over the metallic towers. Then unexpectedly she laughed again, not cruelly, not angrily, but in a way that made Kieran feel strangely at ease, even though he was surrounded by some of the deadliest beings in the galaxy. You are different, she said, still smiling, different from any human I have heard about, curious, bold, perhaps foolish but bold nonetheless. Kieran felt a flicker of pride. He had not come here to impress anyone, and yet the recognition mattered, even from her, the alien leader. Days passed, and he was taken to their training halls, their arenas, their temples. He saw warriors moving with lightning speed, striking with precision that no human could hope to match. Each motion was perfect, calculated, deadly. Kieran stumbled at first, barely able to keep pace. He fell, tripped, dropped his equipment more times than he could count. The warriors laughed, not cruelly but with amusement, as if watching a child learn to walk. And yet, through it all, the leader watched him. Sometimes she would step forward, demonstrating a move, then stepping back to let him try. Her presence was commanding, yet she offered guidance. Kieran realized she was testing him, not to humiliate him, but to see how he responded to challenge. One afternoon, after yet another exhausting session in the arena, she approached him. Her chest heaved slightly from exertion, and the golden light of the twin suns reflected off her bronze skin. You are slow, she said. You make mistakes. How can you call yourself brave? Kieran wiped sweat from his forehead. His heart pounded in his chest, not from fear, but from something he could not explain. He looked into her eyes, fierce, untamed, yet searching, and then he said it with every ounce of honesty he could summon. Because even though I am weak, I see strength, not just in myself, but in you. Your courage, your skill, your spirit, it gives me the courage to keep going. I cannot match you in combat, but I can learn from you. I can try. The arena fell silent. Even the other warriors paused, staring. The leader's expression softened just slightly. Her sharp eyes lingered on him as if measuring something invisible, something deeper than muscle or weapon. For the first time, Kieran felt that perhaps his humanity, his empathy, his curiosity, his ability to see and speak truth was not weakness. It was a different kind of strength. And somehow in that quiet moment he saw it reflected in her eyes. The leader tilted her head, a spark of intrigue in her gaze. Kieran had no idea what she was thinking, but he felt that a small seed had been planted. A seed that could grow into trust, understanding, maybe even something more. For the first time, he did not feel like a fragile human among warriors. He felt like someone who mattered, someone who could make a difference, and perhaps, just perhaps, someone who could teach even the fiercest alien warrior something she had never known. The days on Valera were harsh and unrelenting, yet Kieran found himself growing stronger in ways he hadn't expected. Each morning, the twin suns rose and painted the city in gold, illuminating the arenas where the alien warriors trained without rest. Kieran's body ached constantly, muscles burning from movements he barely understood, but he refused to give up. Every failure reminded him of his fragility, yet every small success reminded him of something stronger, human determination. The leader watched him closely, her eyes sharp and calculating. She was relentless, testing him in ways that pushed him to the edge. One moment, he would struggle to lift a training weapon heavier than himself. The next, he would be running a course of agility designed for creatures with twice his size and speed. Each time he stumbled, the warriors around him laughed, not cruelly, but with a mixture of surprise and curiosity. You are stubborn, the leader said one morning, her voice echoing across the arena. Her bronze skin gleamed in the sunlight and her posture radiated power. Most would have given up long ago, yet here you are, struggling yet refusing to fall. Kieran took a deep breath, chest heaving. I may be weak, he admitted, but weakness doesn't mean failure. It means I have to work harder. And I will, as long as I have the chance to learn. For the first time, she didn't correct him, didn't challenge him. She only nodded slightly and gestured for him to continue. Kieran realized that in this world, words alone did not hold power. It was action, persistence, courage, and the willingness to keep going when everything screamed to quit. And in that moment, he understood that these alien warriors respected strength, but strength came in many forms, not just physical. One afternoon, the leader personally challenged him to a combat simulation. Her movements were blindingly fast. She struck from every angle, each attack precise, each step calculated. Kieran barely dodged, his arms raised to protect himself, his mind racing to anticipate her moves. He could see the amusement in her eyes, the respect in her stance, and he pushed harder, moving instinctively, trusting his instincts, trusting his human intuition. "You are foolish," she said mid-strike, her breath heavy. "You cannot win against me, and yet you fight." "I fight," Kieran said, panting, "because I refuse to stand aside. I fight because I see more than just strength in you. I see courage, honor, and I want to learn. That is my way of winning." She froze for a fraction of a second, her eyes locking on his. The arena fell silent. Even the other warriors paused, their attention drawn to this unusual human who dared to speak boldly while standing against one of the strongest warriors in Valera. Kieran felt a thrill run through him, not because he had succeeded in combat, but because for the first time, he saw something crack in her, a flicker of admiration, a trace of acknowledgement. The simulation ended with her lowering her weapon, an action he had not expected. "You survive," she said finally. "Not because you are strong, not because you are fast, but because you refuse to be broken. That is rare among your kind." Kieran nodded, sweat dripping down his face, heart pounding. He realized something important. Being human was not about matching alien strength or speed. It was about courage, empathy, and the ability to rise despite fear. That was his edge. That was his power. As the sun set over the city, casting shadows across the gleaming towers, Kieran sat alone in the arena. He was exhausted, battered, yet alive in a way he had never been before. He thought of the leader, the warriors, and the strange connection forming between them. Perhaps one day he could teach them something as well, about humanity, about resilience, about seeing strength not just in muscle but in heart. For now, he would endure. For now, he would fight. And deep inside, he felt a spark of hope that the impossible, bridging the gap between human and warrior, might one day be possible. Days turned into weeks, and Kieran's presence among the alien warriors became less of a curiosity and more of a challenge, a puzzle they could not ignore. He still struggled in training, still fell, still got hurt, yet he refused to give up. Every mistake became a lesson. Every failure became a spark to drive him further. And all the while, the leader watched him, her eyes following his every move with a mixture of intrigue and caution. One evening, the arena was empty except for them. The twin suns had dipped below the horizon, leaving the city bathed in soft gold and violet hues. Kieran was tired, his body aching, sweat and dust coating his skin. The leader stood before him, her arms crossed, bronze skin glowing faintly in the fading light. For the first time, she did not speak immediately. She studied him as if seeing him for the first time, not just the human who stumbled and fell, but the human who refused to be broken. "I have watched you," she said quietly, her voice different now, less commanding, softer, almost thoughtful. "You continue to rise even when all odds are against you. Why?" Kieran wiped his brow and looked up at her. "Because, even though I am small, even though I am weak, I believe in what I do. I cannot ignore what I feel, what I know is right. I have to try, no matter how impossible it seems." Her eyes flickered, a new emotion crossing her features, something Kieran could not name, yet recognized instinctively. Respect, curiosity, something deeper. The silence stretched between them, heavy yet not uncomfortable, as if the world itself had paused to witness this moment. Then, without thinking, without warning, Kieran said the words that had been in his heart since the day he saw her. "You're beautiful." The arena seemed to freeze. Even the distant hum of the city seemed to fade. The leader's eyes widened, her mouth parting slightly. Shock, confusion, and something else, something like awe, crossed her face. She took a small step back, almost unsteady, as if the words had struck her physically. "You said what?" she asked, voice trembling, barely more than a whisper. "You're beautiful," Kieran repeated, slower this time, steady and honest. "Not just in strength, not just in skill, but in everything. Your courage, your spirit, even your laughter." I see it all. And I wanted you to know. For the first time, the leader looked not like a warrior, but like a being capable of vulnerability. Her eyes softened, her shoulders relaxed, and Kieran saw a trace of emotion he had never imagined she could feel. Perhaps pride, perhaps uncertainty, perhaps something he had no word for. The silence that followed was profound. The world felt suspended in that moment. Kieran realized that it was not just the words themselves, but their honesty, their human simplicity that had reached her. They had no pretense, no hidden meaning. They were just truth, and truth, he now understood, could be stronger than any weapon. The leader's lips curved slightly, a faint, hesitant smile that seemed to glow in the dim light. You speak boldly, she said softly. I did not expect this from your kind. Kieran smiled back, feeling his chest swell with a strange warmth. I speak honestly, he said, because sometimes honesty is the strongest thing a human can offer. She looked at him for a long moment and then nodded slightly, almost imperceptibly. That small gesture felt monumental. He had crossed a line that no human had ever crossed before, not with words, not with emotion, and she had accepted it. For the first time, Kieran realized that humanity had power beyond technology, beyond weapons, beyond strength. It had heart, and sometimes that heart could touch even the fiercest warrior in the galaxy. As the suns finally disappeared behind the horizon, leaving the city in soft twilight, Kieran stood tall. He was still small. He was still human. But in that moment he felt invincible. After that night in the arena, everything between Kieran and the alien warriors shifted. He was no longer just the curious human who had stumbled onto their planet. He had earned a place among them, not because of strength or skill, but because of courage, persistence, and the honesty that seemed to unsettle even the fiercest warriors. The leader's eyes followed him constantly now, sometimes with curiosity, sometimes with a spark of something he could not name. Kieran began to notice the little things. How the warriors moved when they thought no one was watching, the way their eyes softened when speaking to each other, the subtle gestures that revealed loyalty and trust, and most of all he noticed the leader, how she carried the weight of command yet observed him with a careful attention, as if trying to understand a language beyond words. One afternoon, she approached him while the others trained. Her expression was calm, but her eyes held the same intensity he had seen before. You continue to surprise me, she said. You are weak and yet you endure. You're kind, it is strange. You fight in ways I do not understand and yet it works. Kieran smiled, wiping sweat from his brow. I fight the way humans always fight. Not because we are the strongest, but because we refuse to give up. We learn, we adapt, we survive. That is our strength. She tilted her head, her expression thoughtful. Perhaps there is truth in what you say. Perhaps strength is not only in muscle, speed, or weapon skill. Perhaps it is something more. Over the next days, the leader began to speak to him more, teaching him not just combat, but their history, their culture, and the principles they lived by. She told him of past battles, of losses so deep they could shatter a warrior's soul. She told him of honor, loyalty, and sacrifice. And Kieran listened, learning with every word, absorbing not only their ways, but the weight of what it meant to be truly strong. In return, he shared what it meant to be human. He spoke of courage without expectation of reward, of hope even when all seems lost, of kindness in the face of indifference. He spoke of emotions, of seeing beauty in life and in others, even in moments of weakness. The leader listened, silent at first, then with interest and slowly with a growing respect. One evening, as the twin suns began to set, casting long shadows across the training grounds, the leader looked at him and said quietly, You teach us something strange. Something dangerous. Kieran frowned. Dangerous? Yes, she said, her eyes softening. Your kind's courage, your empathy. It makes us question ourselves. It makes us doubt what we thought we knew. That is dangerous for warriors? Kieran smiled faintly. Perhaps. Or perhaps it is what is missing. Perhaps what makes humans weak is also what makes us strong in ways warriors cannot see. She studied him for a long moment, the setting suns reflecting in her glowing eyes. I do not know if your kind is ready for our world, she admitted. But I am learning from you. Kieran's heart lifted. That one admission felt like a victory greater than any he could have imagined. Here was a being stronger than any human, yet willing to see the value in him simply because he was human. Simply because he persisted, because he dared, because he saw the world differently. For the first time, Kieran truly understood that humanity's power was not in technology, weapons, or size. It was in spirit, in courage, and in the ability to touch others in ways no brute force ever could. And he realized with a quiet, steady certainty that even on a distant planet full of the galaxy's fiercest warriors, humans could matter, humans could shine. And perhaps, just perhaps, one human had already begun to change everything. The city of Valera had never seen such a calm day. The twin suns shone brightly over the metallic towers, and Kieran thought, perhaps foolishly, that he had begun to belong. The warriors trained around him, their movements precise and rhythmic, and the leader moved among them with that same quiet intensity he had come to recognize. For a brief moment he felt at ease. Then the alarm sounded, sharp, piercing, and terrifying. Red lights flashed across the city, casting jagged shadows on the gleaming streets. Kieran's heart jumped into his throat. The leader's eyes narrowed instantly, and in a blur of bronze and silver she moved to the front of the ranks. "They are attacking," she said, her voice cold and commanding. "Prepare for battle." Kieran froze, panic threatening to take hold. He had trained, yes, but he was still human. Weak, small, fragile. He did not belong in a battlefield with warriors who could crush him without effort. Yet before fear could root him to the ground, the leader's hand grasped his shoulder. "You cannot hide," she said. "Fight with us. Survive with us." He nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. He followed her into the chaos, his heart pounding, adrenaline surging. The enemy forces descended like a storm. Creatures bigger, faster, and more vicious than anything Kieran had imagined. The warriors met them head-on, weapons flashing, bodies moving with deadly precision. Kieran stumbled at first, barely avoiding a strike from one of the enemy creatures. He wanted to run, to hide, but then he remembered something the leader had taught him. Strength is not always physical. He had instincts, ideas, the ability to see patterns they might not. And in that moment he realized that could make a difference. A creature lunged at one of the warriors faster than Kieran could react. Without thinking, he shouted a warning and threw a small device in its path. The creature tripped, giving the warrior enough time to strike. The leader turned to him, eyes wide, a flicker of surprise and admiration in them. "You are resourceful," she said, barely audible over the chaos. "I underestimated you." The battle raged for what felt like hours. Kieran ran, dodged, and acted on instinct, saving warriors when he could. Every time he risked himself, he saw the trust growing in the leader's eyes. They moved together now, not just warrior and human, but allies, relying on each other in ways no one could predict. At one point, Kieran found himself face to face with a massive enemy creature. His heart froze, his weapon trembling in his hands. But then he remembered the words he had said in the arena, the words about seeing courage and strength in the impossible. He took a deep breath, focused, and used his knowledge of human tactics, distracting the creature just long enough for the leader to strike from behind. When the last enemy fell, silence descended. Smoke curled around the city, and the warriors stood among the wreckage, battered but alive. Kieran's chest heaved, sweat and blood mingling, but he had survived. Not because he was the strongest, not because he was fast, but because he had dared, because he had acted, because he had been human. The leader approached him, her eyes locking on his. For the first time, her voice softened completely. "You are unlike any human I imagined," she said. "Your courage, your spirit, it saved lives today. You are remarkable." Kieran felt a warmth spread through his chest. He had feared he would be useless, fragile, invisible. And yet in that moment he realized something extraordinary. Being human, being small and weak, did not mean he was powerless. It meant he had something the strongest warriors could never fully understand: the power to care, to act, and to inspire. As the sun set, painting the city in shades of gold and crimson, Kieran stood beside the leader, exhausted, battered, but alive. He had faced the impossible, and somehow humanity had prevailed, and he knew deep in his heart that this was only the beginning. The city was quiet now. The enemy had been driven back, the smoke of battle slowly drifting away under the twin suns' fading light. Kieran stood among the alien warriors, bruised, bloodied, and exhausted, but alive. His human body ached in every way imaginable, yet he felt an inner strength he had never known. He had survived impossible odds, not with brute force but with courage, persistence, and heart. The leader approached him, her armor scratched, her bronze skin streaked with soot and sweat. But in her eyes there was something softer now, something warmer than he had ever seen before. She stopped before him, studying his tired form with an intensity that made his chest tighten. "You survived," she said, her voice quiet, almost reverent. "Not because you are strong or fast or skilled, but because you are human. You have courage that defies reason. You have a spirit that does not break." Kieran swallowed, unsure how to respond. He had been scared, terrified throughout the battle. Every step, every move had been a choice between running or standing, giving up or daring. Yet somehow he had made it through. Somehow humanity had proven itself, not with weapons, not with armor, not with size, but with heart. "You are remarkable," she said again, softer this time. Her gaze lingered, and then with a deliberate motion she reached out her hand. I want to understand you more. Not as a human observing my world, but as someone who has earned my respect." Kieran felt his chest tighten. He took her hand, feeling the warmth of her skin, the strength behind her grip, and realized something profound. He had crossed a line no human had ever crossed on Valera. He had touched a warrior's heart, not with combat, but with honesty, courage, and truth. "I want to learn from you too," he said, voice steady, despite the pounding of his heart. "Not just your strength, but your courage, your spirit. And maybe in the process you can learn from mine." For a long moment they simply stood there, hands touching, eyes meeting, a connection forming that neither fully understood yet. Around them the warriors moved silently, respectful, observing the bond that had grown from trust, from struggle, from survival. Then the leader nodded slowly. "Your kind is different," she admitted. "I do not know if others would survive as you have. But you have something special, something even we warriors cannot claim." Kieran smiled faintly. "That's what it means to be human. We are small. We are fragile. But we do not give up. And sometimes, that is enough to change worlds." She studied him, her eyes reflecting the last rays of the setting suns. "Perhaps," she said softly. "And perhaps you have already changed mine." The city around them began to sparkle as the night approached. Lights blinked on, reflecting off the towers like stars fallen from the sky. Kieran looked around and realized that this alien world, so vast, so impossible, had come to accept him. Not as an observer, not as a guest, but as someone who mattered. His humanity had left a mark on Valera, on its warriors and on its leader. In that moment, Kieran understood the truth of it all. Humans were small, fragile, and vulnerable. But they also carried something no alien could ever fully replicate. Courage, empathy, hope, the power to touch hearts, to inspire and to change even the strongest beings simply by being who they were. The leader smiled faintly, a rare and radiant expression that seemed to light up the twilight. "Perhaps you are beautiful too, human, not just in words but in spirit." Kieran's chest swelled. For the first time, he truly believed it. Humanity could shine. Humanity could stand among the fiercest warriors in the galaxy. And maybe, just maybe, a single human could make the impossible possible. Together, they stood there side by side, watching the twin suns disappear completely and the first stars of Valera's night twinkle above. A human and a warrior bound by trust, courage, and the quiet, unstoppable power of heart. And in that quiet, golden moment, Kieran knew the truth of the universe. Humanity mattered. Humanity always would.